I've always been someone who's wanted to build products, services that were really valuable, that made a big difference in someone's life, that helped make people move forward, enabled them to do new things. Things like creating new power sources, things like providing water, things like helping people in an emergency. That's hugely a big driver for me. And I thought if I did this, it's super duper valuable. But that's not how people perceive value. It's more to that than just how valuable it is in the moment, in that use. And so I thought about what is that? What are those other parts of making something valuable? And I think I know what they are now, or at least some of them. I think the first one is, again, objective value per use. I think that's one of the pieces of value. Another one is how frequently you use something. A third one is the urgency of using it. If you really need something at that moment, it is much more valuable to you than something you might not need. But then I think there's also something that reduces the perceived value of something, of a service or something else, and that is the perceived alternatives. Are there other alternatives that people perceive? And if so, that then makes your thing less valuable because they have choices. So let's take two examples, the smartphone and your plunger. I would say 99% of the time, your smartphone is much more valuable than your plunger. You use it multiple times a day, probably like 40 times a day. It has very high objective use. You can use it to communicate, take pictures, do all sorts of incredible things, and take action with them. And they're fairly urgent when it allows you to act on something that's important right now, multiple times in a day. That's valuable. However, there are times when this ain't going to help you. There are times when certain things get clogged and you can't continue a certain action, and the only thing that can solve that problem is this. And that is a situation where this is very urgent and makes a huge difference. It quite literally unblocks your plumbing system. So that's where that's the situation where your plunger becomes more valuable than your smartphone. And that's why I think this framework is not perfect. These are, I think, the attributes, but I don't know how they perfectly relate because there's things like context and time that's super valuable. And that's why I think it all fits first with the individual. And then you can expand the framework to the number of people that fit that specific mold. And that is your market segment that you can actually talk about how they value something. Beyond that, you're generalizing too much. Then there's also concepts like social proof. Does someone else having something make this less valuable or does it make it more valuable? It probably depends on who it is. And does it affect the objective value of it? No, that's more like a feeling. So those are parts of the equation, the framework that I haven't completely worked out yet. But I think these things together help you understand things you can do to make yourself seem more valuable, make your product seem more valuable, or make them seem much more different. And thus, by making them not have any alternatives, also makes them more valuable. Let me know what you think.